Nandini Nair is an award-winning author of over 75 books for children of all ages. A prolific children's writer, her books have been published by well-known Indian publishers such as Karidi, Amar Chitrakada, Scholastic, Puffin, HarperCollins and Mango, among others. Her book title, What Shall I Make, was named an outstanding book by the United States Board on Books for Young Readers. Many of her works have been recommended by the Central Board of Secondary Education as well and have also been featured on the Parag Honor List. Welcome, ma'am.
Good morning, all of you. Okay, so, like she very nicely announced, I write stories for children, and I write stories for children of different ages. And I thought I was going to get littler children today for the session. So I'm wondering now whether the books are going to be too easy for you, or are you just going to love listening to a story? Which is it? Are you okay with the story? Yes with the story? Okay. Okay, so how many of you actually do read books? Oh, okay, I'm very glad. What kinds of books? Fantasy, but some titles, authors, something? Percy Jackson, history. Okay, which part of history? What history? Modern India. Okay. Holly Jackson. Okay, alright. So, the story that I am going to present to you today came out of some research that I did into the history particularly of India. Okay? So, when we talk about the British in India, right? You know that the British were in India, right? What are the things that you remember of the British Raj, the time when the British were here? They were extremely mean to whom? Let's be specific. Every Indian. Okay. Oh yes, yes, they did take a lot of loot. What was in the loot?
Diamond.
Okay. The words. Yes, all of you are really right because yes, they did take a lot of stuff, including words like bangle, loot, pajamas, bungalow. These are all from Indian languages. But did you know that they looted animals too? What animals? No, but what do you mean by looting the animals? What did they do with the animals? Hunting is killing them. You're very right because shikar was a very important part of the life in the Mughal court. So people came, when the Britishers came here, they saw that, oh my God, India has so many animals which we have never seen because England doesn't have most of the animals that we have. And you know which were the animals that really sort of enthralled them? They wanted to get these. Any guesses? Elephant. What is it? Wolves. Yes. Okay. White dogs. Yes. Anything else? Peacock. All right. Peacocks. Killing peacocks. It is so funny because in many kingdoms, peacocks are displayed because peacocks are so ordinary and so easily found in India. To the point where the Indians just feel like, why would you hunt such a tame animal? So we have elephant. Someone said tiger. Anyone tiger? Any idea which other animals they really wanted to hunt? Tiger, elephant, lion. So lions actually what happened is they were only in Gujarat, right? So a lot of them actually did get kind of killed off very early, so there were not so many left. The third animal was a rhinoceros. Okay, and they were not just eager to hunt them because very few Britishers came to India. It was very expensive. It was a very long journey. So what happened was when they came here and they hunted, the next thought was, hey, wait a minute. Our people back in England have never seen these animals. What will happen if we were to capture them and transport them all the way to England? We would make a lot of money displaying them. So the animals that were captured here were taken, and do you think it was like a very easy journey? A very comfortable journey? Why? Why? Have you thought about the animals in those cages? How was it? What kind of a journey was it? Anything?
They did not get food.
They did not get food. They did get food, but it was not a right kind of food. So your point is right. So one thing is remember that these animals had to be part of the jungles of India. And where are the jungles in India? In the center, what we call today Madhya Pradesh, what the British called the central provinces. Okay, from there they had to be taken to two ports. They had to be put on a ship. One was on the east coast, and one port was on the west coast. Which one's were these? East coast. Yes. East coast. Which was the name of the port? Which city was it? Where did the ships? Yes. Yes, Calcutta. What was called Calcutta? What we call Kolkata today? West. Gujarat is a region, state, whatever. Let's think of one place. Just think of the west coast, which is the biggest harbour there. Okay, so now imagine you can get a map of India in your head. Imagine how much the animals had to travel from Madhya Pradesh either to the east coast, that is Kolkata, or to the west coast, that is Bombay, and the rhinos had to come from Assam and Bengal because that's where you get the rhinos. And then these animals had to travel there, and their travel was not over. They had to get on ships. And you know how long the ships took to reach England? Any guesses?
3 days.
3 days. This was okay. Let me give you the year. This was in 1805 or something.
months.
How many months?
3 months.
3 months. Anyone else?
5 months.
It took 6 to 7 months. Okay, if the weather was good, because they left Calcutta. They came down. They had to go around the island of Sri Lanka, and then they sailed there, and then they came to the continent of Africa, and then they had to sail down the tip of Africa, it's called the Cape of Good Hope, but actually this was a continent, this was a place which had very, very bad weather, lots of storms. So when there were storms, the ships would be delayed, of course. And can you imagine the animals? The ship was going this way and that, and the animals were either in the hold, or the bigger animals like the elephants and the rhinos were captured and kept on the deck. So the waves would be slamming into them. The animals would be terrified. Some of them got so terrified that they managed to break free and they just leapt off the ship. Of course they died. Yes, I'm sorry to say, not a happy ending. And then they had to go around the tip of Africa, the Cape of Good Hope, and then go all the way up to reach England. And when they reached England, you know what happened? They reached when it was winter. Now think of our animals. What kind of weather are they used to? Is it cold in India? Right? They're humid. Yes, they're used to humid weather. You know, it's such a great point to be humid because both the elephant and the rhinos, their skin got so dry with all the salt water that they used to rub fish oil onto the skin to keep them, from cracking. But when they reached England, it was usually winter. And the people in England who had to take care of these animals had no clue that these animals came from a warm place. They didn't know what they ate. Can you guess what they fed these animals? Like say a rhino or an elephant. What were these animals given? Meat? What is it? Meat? You're right actually. The rhinos were given things like sausages, boiled potatoes, cheese sandwiches. Okay, simply because people didn't know bread buns were very, very common as a diet for the elephants. So these animals were then displayed in very small cages where they had no room to even move. So this was part of the research that I did for a book which I wrote about these animals, which is available in the festival bookshop if you want to look at. But the story that I am going to read out to you today is born out of all of this research, and like I said, it's meant for a much younger audience. It's called A Pet for the Princess. And it came again out of my reading and thinking about how we take animals for granted. Don't we? Do we ever ask the animal if they wanted to go all the way across the world? Because one of the things also that happened, you should remember, is when they captured animals, do you think they captured like a big animal, like a full-grown adult animal, or like a baby? Why? Why a baby?
Because they are easier to capture.
They're easier to capture
And easier to manage.
Yes, they're easier to tame and manage. Now, if there is the elephant mother there, is she going to let some humans come and grab her, young calf and take away? She's going to attack them, right? So you know what the hunters did first?
Shot them.
Yes, they kill the mother elephant first. They kill the mother rhino first because rhinos can be terrifyingly aggressive. They can really cause you a lot of harm. So they kill them first, and then they grab the baby. And even the grabbing of the baby, it was not like a gentle process, it was very violent. These animals were also fighting back. They were missing their mothers. And many of them died even in that process. And then these animals were taken to the zoos and to the menageries. So menagerie is a collection of animals. Okay? So when you say a collection of animals, it means that there will only be one animal of a kind. So if there's an elephant, there's only going to be one. If there's a rhino, there'll only be one. And it was only meant to show off, to show people and earn money. How do you think a zoo is different?
There are many.
Sorry?
There are many of the same.
Many of the same. There's a rule actually now that you cannot have a single animal. But do you think zoos are any better? Why?
They keep it in cages.
They keep it in cages? Captive, yes.
They can't. They're natural. They can't do it.
They can't do any of these things, yes. So I'm glad that you all have that in place so you will understand why I wrote this story, which I call A Pet for the Princess. And I'm going to read it out to you. And I want to then leave some time for you to ask me questions. If you have questions, or are you at the age when you don't have questions? Do you have questions at all? Any questions? You do? Okay, go ahead. Which one? This one. This one was 200. Okay? Okay, any other questions? Okay. So maybe after we've done this, you can ask me questions about writing or reading or books or whatever. So this is, I don't know how many of you are aware of the kinds of books you have in India for children. So we have for the really young one, we have what we call a picture book, which these are a couple of the picture books that I've written. So if you had been a little younger, this was the story I was going to tell you first. And this is another one. So the reason I didn't tell you the story, you'll discover the minute I show you the text. So the text is kept to a very minimum. But this also is about animals. It does have animals. Animals that this boy makes out of
Clay.
not clay, out of art, out of wood. Yeah. So these are picture books that you have. This is also a picture book, slightly older, for slightly older children. Okay, so it has again text like this, and you have the pictures there. So Princess Naina's birthday was just 10 days away. She was going to be 8 years old. What would her father, the Raja, get her? Toys? Books? She installed baskets of toys, the Raja said, and shelves full of books, bangles, a necklace. But Princess Naina did not like jewelry. I need help, the Raja said. So he called all his ministers. Why not get Princess Naina a pet? The chief minister asked. Yes, the other ministers nodded. They all knew that the princess loved animals. But what kind of a pet would the princess like? And where will we find it? Go to the farthest corners of the kingdom, the Raja told them, and bring back a pet for the princess. The ministers only had a few days to find a pet. So they packed their bags, jumped on their horses, and flew away. The royal treasurer, so a treasurer is the person who is in charge of all the money in the kingdom. So the royal treasurer was the first to find an animal. It was a long snake stretched out in the sun. Snakes hunt their own food, the royal treasurer thought. This pet will cost nothing at all. He put the snake in a basket. A cheap pet, he smiled, is the best pet. The royal gardener saw many animals, but none of them was a perfect pet for the princess. Then he saw a strange animal. It was tall and had a hump on its back. Wonderful, the royal gardener smiled. Yeah? Camel, yeah. This animal can trim the trees in the palace garden. He caught the camel and set off for home. A useful pet, he said, is the best pet. The royal cook rode far. Then he stopped to rest and eat. That was when he saw a tortoise. You look hungry, the royal cook said. He shared his food with the tortoise. The tortoise chewed up watery cucumber and soggy tomatoes. It ate dried up carrots and asked for more. This animal will eat the food that no one else will, the royal cook smiled. He took the tortoise with him. A pet that's easy to feed, he said, is the best pet. The royal doctor found two bear cubs. They can live in the palace garden, she said, and the princess will play with them. The royal doctor believed that every child needed fresh air and good sunshine. A pet that keeps you healthy, she said, is the best pet. The chief minister saw rabbits and goldfish. He saw monkeys, lizards, and brightly colored parrots. Two ordinary, he said. The princess needed a royal animal. Then he saw a tiger. He liked its golden black stripes. He liked its golden eyes and deep blue. A pet that impresses, he said, is the best pet. The royal engineer did not want a pet that needed a cage. She was tired of building palaces, halls, and bridges. So she was happy to find an elephant. A pet that is easy to care for, she said, is the best pet. I want an unusual pet, the royal teacher said. An animal that no one has ever seen. She was happy to find a rhinoceros and rode back to the palace with it. A pet that teaches you new things, she said, is the best pet. The hall in the palace was now full of animals. One more, the king cried when he saw the rhino. And the royal treasurer very warningly said, it costs a lot to feed an animal. And the chief minister told the Raja, so we can only keep one. But which animal would they keep? Just then Princess Nayana walked in. Oh, she squeaked, is this my birthday gift? The Raja said, actually, zoo. The princess smiled, you got me a zoo. No, the Raja said, how did you have a zoo? He looked at his ministers for help. But the chief minister was smiling and he said, a zoo is a wonderful idea. No other kingdom has a zoo. And the royal teacher said, a zoo will help children learn about animals. And the royal doctor said, and children needed plenty of fresh air. Royal treasurer was already thinking of all the money and he said, visitors to the zoo will buy tickets and we can earn a lot of money. Animal that earns money, the chief minister said, is the best animal. But the royal engineer was not happy. I'll have to build new cages, she moaned. And I will have to cook for the animals, the royal cook. No, Princess Nayana shook her head. Then where will the animals live? The ministers asked. What will they eat? The animals will live in the jungle, Princess Nayana said. No cages? The royal engineer asked. No fences, no sheds? The animals will be free, the Princess Nayana said. Free like they are meant to be. But Nayana, the Raja said, we wanted a pet for you. A pet that would teach you something. A pet that would make you happy. I only want an animal that is happy, Princess Nayana said. An animal that is free is happy. And a happy animal, Princess Nayana smiled, is the best animal. So that is where they were. So now, do you have any questions about animals and what happened to them, either now or later? What do you think was not okay with the attitude of people in this story? Very easy for themselves. Did they ever think of the animals? Right? So this was my idea when I was writing the story, because I wanted us to think about how we try to make life easy. Even if you say you want a pet at home, your parents will say, okay, get a goldfish. Why? The goldfish is not going to run around, it's not going to bark, it's not going to mew, it's not going to dirty the house. So they always we are thinking of what makes life easy for us. But do we think about the animals and what they are going through? Any other question, anything that you guys want to ask or discuss or share about your own pets? Yes? I don't what stories? Aman Chitakatha stories. You want me to tell you about that? What made me write Aman Chitakatha stories? Okay, that's an interesting question. So all of you read Aman Chitakatha and Tinkle. So I've written for Tinkle as well many years ago. And Aman Chitakatha is it's a collection of stories about the women freedom fighters. When we think about freedom fighters, we only think of a couple of names that we know. So the stories that I wrote here in this collection, they are about someone like Kanaklata Barua. She's only 17 years old and she belongs to Assam. And she decided that she's going to join the fight. And she, they were told they were warned not to carry the Indian flag, what was the flag then. But she insisted, and there was a scuffle and a shootout, and she died at just 17 years. So I wrote about her. I wrote about Sarojini Naidu. I wrote about Vijayalakshmi Pandit, which even the research was fascinating because we always think that these people who fought for the freedom of our country, they had a plan and they're ready to do whatever it needed. But in her autobiography, Vijayalakshmi Pandit said, I was feeling like I'm doing nothing at all. So I was wanted to go to prison. I wanted to do it. When she went to prison, finally she hated it. You know why? Because she had 3 daughters. She had to leave them and come here. And she said, what have I done? Why did I get into prison? And when she went out, finally, the youngest daughter refused to agree that this is my mother. And she had to take her away. She cried and wept and wailed and said that this is not my mother and I'm not going with you. So I found these things very interesting. Then I also wrote about somebody called Aruna Asaf Ali. Have you heard of her? I had also not heard of her. I only knew her as a name, that is the name of a road in New Delhi, Aruna Asaf Ali Marg. Right? Now you remember. You really should read about this lady. She was amazing. Because you remember in 1942, Mahatma Gandhi said, do or die, quit India, he said, right? So what happened was he was planning the next day to actually unfurl the flag. But the British came to know of this and they swooped in and they grabbed all the leaders, put them on a train and sent them off to different locations. Nobody knew where. So there was nobody actually to unfurl the flag and Aruna Asaf Ali went and did it. And then she realized that there is no leader here. So who is going to lead the ordinary people? So what she did was she went underground. Underground in the sense she went into hiding and she led a terribly dangerous life. Sometimes she would escape just moments before the police came there. Her health was completely gone, but she managed to keep the movement alive for the next couple of years. And she was even offered positions like her husband was offered the ambassadorship to America and later I think to Switzerland. She said, I'm not going because the work needs to be done here in India. So reading about these women, it was very, very inspiring. It made me realize that these women were truly given up things and had stuck to their ideology and they suffered a lot. Yeah, thank you for reminding me of that. It was I was doing this research during the pandemic and to a large extent it sort of, because we were all feeling so helpless at that time and nowhere to go out. So reading about these women was really helped, it really inspired me. Anyone else? Anything about reading, writing? You don't have to talk about animals or comment for the reasons. Sorry. No, I write only for children. Which age? So like I showed you the picture books, right? So those are the books meant for the youngest readers. And usually they'll be shown the text and the parent will read the text and they'll look at the pictures. Then you have, what is called early chapter books. When you start school and you learn to read, but you don't want to read fat books. You can only manage reading. So I've written for that as well. And then we have your age, which is the confident readers. So I have books for that age also. So I've written for pretty much all the ages. Anyone else? Anything else? Reading, writing again?
How do you find your passion for writing?
Okay, so this is I feel that passion is a very interesting word because passion without actual work doesn't result in anything. So when I was your age, I read a lot. I read lots of books, and in those days we only had a British author called Enid Blyton. I don't know, do people still read Enid Blyton? Yeah. So in those days it was only that. The writing for children who India by Indian authors had not really started. So I read a lot of this. And I used to think, how amazing that with her words, this lady has created a world which I like so much that I don't want the book to end. Does it happen to you that when you look at how many pages there are left in the book, you feel like I don't want this book to end? And then I thought, how would it be if I were able to write a story that got the readers into my world? So yes, the dream was there right from childhood, but I began only when I really started on it when I sat down wrote a short story for a newspaper, and after that was published, I wrote lots more stories, and then the picture books, and then books for children. Anyone else with questions? Please do that. Oh, my favorite book. So, I'm very wary of naming just one book. Why? I feel like if I say that this is my favorite book, then everyone will want to know what is special about it. I think that for all of us, we need to read whatever you can. I know some of the books, when the book is over, you say, what a terrible book, why did I waste my time on it? But you know what, that book is also teaching you something. It's teaching how not to write. It's teaching you what is the wrong way to tell a story. It's teaching you what are the wrong characters to put in a book. So you will never do that again. And good books, of course, they stay with you and they keep inspiring you. So for me, like I said, I didn't write. And then there is this author called Shashi Deshpande who wrote 4 books for children. And those books are amazing because till then I really thought that only children whose names are like Lucy and George and who are eating cake and bread and sandwich, only they can do fun things and have adventures. So Shashi Deshpande had characters with Indian names, like names like I have heard, names that my friends had. They eat the kind of food that we ate, and reading it made me realize anybody can have adventures. Anybody can write these kinds of stories. So it seems very easy now, but at that time it was like this huge, like the roof flew off my head and I was seeing light for the first time. So that's why I feel like the more you read, the more you are exposed to different kinds of writers. But since you asked, I tell you, Shashi Deshpande is an author I really admire and love. There's an author called Diana Wynne Jones, a British author. Has anyone read her, heard of her? You have. So Diana Wynne Jones is amazing. In India, we have this really, she's no more with us, a writer of historical stories called Subhadra Sen. Has anyone heard of her? She has a collection of stories called History, Mystery, Dal and Biryani. And you get the title itself, it will make you want to pick it up and read it. And it is about dal. It is about this family, this man in this book in Lucknow, in 19th century Lucknow, who makes amazing dal. The only problem is that this man has a very short temper, and his son wants him to get the Nawab's patronage. So the Nawab comes, and this book tells him that I'll make the dal for you, but when I call you to eat it, you have to come. If you don't come, the dal will get spoiled. So this boy is very nervous because if the Nawab likes the dal, they are going to be rich, like they are not going to be poor any longer. But the Nawab is flying the kite when this boy takes the message to say that the dal is ready. He's thinking, oh my god, the Nawab is not going to leave the kite. So he goes to his friend, who is a very good kite player, and tells him, you cut that Nawab's kite. So that then the Nawab loses interest in the kite making, in the kite flying, and actually comes, eats the dal, likes it so much that he gives the boy's father a lot of money and even tells him that you are going to be a chef. So these are the kinds of stories where Subhadra Sen has used history so beautifully to make us not just have a good read but also to learn so much about the past. So Subhadra Sen is again another author I would highly recommend for all of you. Then there's one particular book by an author, again Indian author called Ranjit Lal. It's called The Battle for Number 90, which is set in the days just after, when our Prime Minister Indira Gandhi was assassinated. And it's about that. Again, an amazing. So just some of the books you will also. So thank you all. I hope you had as much fun as I did. And